Hello and welcome back to the 11.99 course for the Canadian Open at Crankworx. This course is fast, rough, and is a rider and fan favourite alike. We thought we'd use it as an opportunity to get to know more about the riders' bikes, as well as me getting progressively more sunburned. So I'm going to try and do the impossible. I'm going to try and do a bike check and not just talk about handlebars.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about something other than the handlebars. We can talk about why I run the handlebars, but we don't have to talk about all about the handlebars.
Well, I think, it's interesting, I think, to talk about the effects of it and looking also at the intents you kind of helped sort of, I suppose, develop over a number of years.
Yeah.
Do you think it'd be fair to say you kind of have a preference for a more rearward weight bias? You don't want...
Yeah, I do have a preference for a rearward weight bias. And I've been doing quite a bit of testing with wheelbase numbers and reach numbers in relation to the way my bias does stay quite a bit behind the bottom bracket. And that's been a bit of an evolution since the Intense program. But I do like the bike to ride maybe 2% dynamic sag higher than the front and the rear. And I do like to have my weight over the rear axle as much as I can. Yeah,
I mean, especially I think it can be a lot less fatiguing if you can be aggressive enough on the front and committed on the front.
Yeah.
You can get something that...
Well, I ride pretty centered on, like, in a vertical position, but like a lot on my legs in comparison to my hands.
Yes.
Which I rarely have issues where I feel like I'm getting thrown directly over the handlebars. I don't like the feeling, I like to be in a defensive position. I don't like the feeling of being pushed over the bars or out the front of the bike. Yeah. And I feel like I gain a lot more confidence from riding kind of behind a ways back. I'm gonna ride in the same position, so I might as well make it so I don't have to move in anyways, and I have a good weight bias in that position.
Now, something I've seen on your bike, and there's a lot of gubbins going on here. There's a plate that can be attached on the rear triangle. But what I found really interesting about the rear end of this bike, these bolts on the back here, what are they for? Is it like a panny rack or something? What is it?
Yeah, there's some bolts there. We're not using them at the moment, but I think we have some more things coming where they may get used, which will be exciting. We're a new program and we're moving forward, and some things are more important than others, but there's definitely some things in the works that we may use them for in the future, so I'll have something cool to talk about.
Because I was trying to work out what it was, whether it was like some sort of like maybe a way to go into a testing jig to work into the stiffness that you're clearly working on.
Yeah, so we are working with stiffness for sure, and I am running the bike vertically pretty stiff in the unified rear triangle, but I'm trying to get quite a bit of flex out of the bike laterally. A real consistent flex. I wouldn't say it's like super floppy, because I always thought just make it like as comfortable as I could, but there is definitely a limit. And right now I think we're in a good place where the bike has nice flex through the corner to help keep a bit more traction, but at the same time it doesn't feel like when I slap a corner or really load the wheel, I get a spring back feeling, which I did get on the first 4-bar Intense with the pivots being so close together. I felt like the rear end twisted quite a lot when I hit corners.
But it's interesting because in the same way that setting with suspension for a modern racetrack is so difficult because you demand so much grip, but also huge impacts.
Yeah.
You're still tracking off cambers incredibly quick, but then you drive the bike so hard through turns. Yeah. What's that relationship like? And unpicking it must be a huge challenge.
Yeah, so coming from, we worked a lot with suspension systems at Intense, and we didn't work as much with frame rigidity. I would say that we are more in a position with making it rigid enough for the demands of the World Cup, but now we're in a position with this, it's a different suspension design, it works completely differently, but where we can work a bit more in terms of having the bike track, right? But also at the same time not feeling like I'm getting loaded, and it's not really the loading into the corner that I don't like, it's the unloading.
Yes, yeah.
While the thing that was really interesting for me in terms of the demands of a World Cup is the vertical stiffness to hit big drops, but also the reaction of the stiffness where the shock goes into the unified rear triangle, where it doesn't load, the shock doesn't cause a lot of flex in the frame. Essentially, to me, with the plate I'm running, makes it feel like the shock is one shim stack stiffer in terms of compression, high-speed compression. The energy is dispersed better.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. For me, it's not something I ever worked with on Intense. We just made it rigid enough.
Yeah.
But there is like a lot of play we can do in terms of stiffness of the frame. That has a very defined riding characteristic, which is really interesting to me.
I think it's interesting as well seeing, like for instance, riding one of those Commencals recently, that it feels like it offers incredible tracking, and I think some of it comes because it has a really, to my mind at least, obviously I ride just a fraction of the forces that you guys are putting through, but it felt like the compliance between the front and rear axle was really consistent, so you could really kind of carve through. But it's interesting in some ways. I think when you've got a flexi frame, like you said, I think you can have a bike that feels like it kind of oversteers through turns. It wants to like spit you out the other side, but then flexi wheels can make it feel like it understeers. The wheels just kind of, flex through. You're going for, we talk a lot about frame flex here, but you're going for carbon wheels. Is that something you have kind of much choice on? Is that something that you can help tune with E13?
It isn't something I have a lot of choice on, but we've done a lot in terms of tuning of the rim. We definitely, the last version of the E13 wheel was very stiff.
Yes.
And this rim allows us to run the spokes pretty stiff while being very compliant. Like where before, our wheels were pretty much falling apart because we were running them so soft. You could get like a couple runs with a really good feel in terms of the spokes coming loose. Yeah. And now we can run them a bit tighter. And it was a big adjustment for me running this new rim. Is like, where is the sweet spot? And we did a bunch of testing with E13 on that, and I'm really happy with where we're at right now. The rim is super compliant and also has good stiffness laterally. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting.
But that's quite a common trend with carbon wheels, and I think that they can be, like you said, you can get a real sweet spot. But as they bend and flex, they're never going to tighten the spoke. But as it binds, it can
loosen it.
It can loosen it.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you unload the spoke nipple, it's going to have an effect where the spoke nipple can start to back out. And with World Cup race wheels, we're always tightening them and truing them and working with the wheel. So if you do use a locking nipple, it definitely helps. But over time, that locking mechanism is going to wear down as you tighten and true and work on the wheel. So it's not something that lasts forever.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to see when your pannier rack's coming out.
Yeah, I think it's coming soon. I mean, it's definitely it is a mounting device, but currently nothing to mount to it.
I'm super excited. And so one last question. I guess that's just for another stiffness bridge.
Yeah, and we also have one underneath the bottom of the triangle as well.
So, do you feel, sorry to go back in, I'm just interested.
No, it's okay, go ahead, all you want.
Do you ever feel like, how to put this? Is it ever a bit sort of overwhelming with this many kind of things for compliance, or is it just another thing you can unpick, explore, and kind of enjoy as a bike rider? Because it's so fun to get your bike set up as you want to, right?
I really do enjoy working with the stiffness, and now I think we kind of got the stiffness in a general bias that I liked, and then we started working on suspension, and now we're in a place where I'm really happy with suspension, and now we can go back and work a bit more refinement on frame rigidity. Also, the thing that I've been really interested in is the vibrations and damping vibrations in the frame, which has been just something that has been on my mind quite a lot, and something I've kind of been inquiring in, and it's really interesting for me because at some point in time you can't ride any faster because you just can't see where you're going. Like your eyes start to rattle, and the more I can dampen that vibration, I feel like I'm able to ride faster, which is really interesting for me.
And through bike development, was it strange getting that intense to such a good place and kind of then passing the project on?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard because I felt like I was riding so good on that bike, and it felt so effortless. Yeah. But at the end of the day, a suspension system is always going to have habits. So like that suspension system, I feel like we got in a really good place, and I was really happy with. And now I've gotten to develop this suspension system, and before that I got to develop another one. And I'm just taking all this learning and knowledge, working with all these different companies over the years, and it's really caused me to develop as a rider of what my preferences are, what I want. And it's not like I've got the bike good and I've rode it for 4 years. It's continual learning, which has been really fun for me. And I've almost gotten to the point now where I'm like, I'm definitely really picky, but I sometimes almost focus more on the bike than the riding, which has been something I've really had to kind of look at my like racecraft and my riding and try to not always go to the bike to make changes, go to the bike, but it is pretty wild when you get the bike to a position where it feels effortless to ride fast and you're not really having to change your body position or like lean over the front or lean back, or you just kind of stand there and like I feel like I'm just standing and leaning, and it makes like my body movement very minimal on the bike, and it's really easy to ride fast, especially for on a 4-minute rough track.
Well, it's funny, I think, you know, when you look at the purest example of sending a human down a hill very quickly, I would argue that in some ways skiing's a bit purer.
Yeah.
Because they're not just limited by interacting it's only with their feet. And I think that what's really cool about having, because I quite like high front end as well, is that it's almost, it really makes you ride with your hips and your feet in a way that, you know, and like I just feel that it opens up so much. But then it's funny, like riding that intense, and obviously riding in a completely different way to you, but for me, I kind of understood your handlebars because I felt the rearward weight bias.
Yeah.
Now you hit stuff a lot harder on the front, so you get more grip there anyway. But I was like, wow, this all really begins to make sense. And I think that intense is a super cool bike to ride. And hopefully one day I go down the shops and bring back my bread and milk with that pannier rack. And go from there.
Yeah, maybe we can get you on it, do a test ride there, see what you think.
Super cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, and have a great weekend.
Okay, no worries. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Aaron, your Crestline is a bike we know you've been riding for a while, but we haven't actually seen you ride it.
Yeah.
It's great to see you make an appearance here.
Thanks, man.
Over your career, I think it's been safe to say you haven't been afraid to sort of, you know, chop and change parts, you know, things have changed year on year, but one mainstay has been Fox.
Yep.
Now you're on Öhlins.
Yep.
Can you talk about sort of the characteristic and the different feel? I mean, well, I actually couldn't resist having a feel of your forks. They're still pretty bloody firm.
Yeah.
But how they feel, and how were you able to get the same feeling, or did you just decide to pursue something different?
So we're definitely still very much in the process of figuring that out. I've got about 2 days on this bike now.
So it's
I posted
fresh
stuff a couple months ago, and then I ended up having a kind of a foot injury from hiking and stuff. So I had to take another month and a half off the bike. So I've just ridden this a couple times with the Öhlins suspension. So I've maybe got like 5 days on the bike total, and maybe 2 on the bike with the Öhlins stuff. So I'm definitely like just starting that journey of kind of figuring out like baseline settings and kind of where we're going to be at with the Öhlins stuff. But yeah, I mean, first impression, it's always hard to say because obviously I had so many years on the Fox stuff and we had so much tuning, and I know where I wanted to be and kind of like the firmness. So when you jump on, say with Öhlins, they gave me some settings they thought would be close, but for me, I kind of like to learn where something starts and kind of take it through that process of getting it to where I need, because I feel like long term I learn a bit more that way. So initial impressions with the Öhlins stuff, for sure, it had a more like supple, softer feel off the top, for sure, kind of all the way through the travel overall. Like it just has the Fox stuff definitely has like a stiff, really firm, really fast feel. Like you can ride this stuff really fast, but it's definitely like you got to hold on to it, and especially with how I ride it. It's not the most forgiving setup, but it's definitely fast. That's how I've usually run it in the past. So I noticed with the Öhlins stuff, it grips the ground better. Like it definitely rides, it feels like overall lower in the travel, like from the get-go. Again, we're pretty quickly going stiffer on it, so we'll see where I end up when I kind of really can run it through the paces. But I think my overall first impression was like it had a little bit better, like that small bump sensitivity, kind of like grip to the ground. Overall, the feel is definitely like a softer overall feel than what I was riding on the Fox stuff. So yeah, for me so far, like I really like that kind of extra grip that I have. It's like pretty confidence inspiring. But we've been working on getting it to where it's got enough hold up down deep, because I like to smash into stuff pretty hard. So kind of finding that balance. So I think we've already gone up like 3 stages on the tune, on the fork, and on the shock. I think we're already like quite stiff. And I think I'm going to go up another tune on the fork after riding this track today, because it's a proper track. So yeah, we're very early days though in figuring it out.
I mean, you spent maybe a decade and a half on Fox. How often, you know, obviously as a sort of constant World Cup podiums throughout your whole career, you probably had access to that rad program, that, you know, the prototype. Were you often on like the standard grip too, or was it always like a modified version?
It kind of changed through the years. Earlier in my career, I was pretty much always on prototype stuff. And when I was winning and Fox was really like pushing things forward on the technology, on the suspension at the time, I was kind of always on proto stuff for the most part. And a lot of times I was on the only prototype set of stuff. Like I was the guy that was kind of testing that next level of stuff a lot. And then probably the last 5 or 6 years, I think they've changed a little bit over there, at least from my experience. Maybe it was my results too, but I think it was more like they would kind of test, get the stuff where they need it, and then kind of all the riders would like make the step at a similar time. So I know there's still a few guys, and I was one of them for a while, where you're kind of getting the new stuff year over year, but I felt like we were on more production stuff like the last 5 years. Like there wasn't such a big gap, at least with my stuff. I would be on different tunes for sure, where like we'd be on a stock damper, but they'd be tuning it to kind of what I want, but they weren't like these completely trick prototype one-off type of things. Like, yeah.
And it feels like, you know, with sort of, let's face it, in the suspension space, RockShox and Fox are the biggest players. It feels like, at least in my experience in recent years, they've walked up in terms of at least their stock damping tunes. They've gone slightly firmer. That's something that Öhlins have been at for a while. It feels like they offer that more damped feel, maybe with someone like Manitou. Is that something, well, it is early days on the bike,
yeah,
but looking the way your forks run, they seem to run like incredibly firm, but also very high in the travel. And that's often done a lot through the air spring,
yeah.
You know, really cracking it up. Do you think, you know, are you running like the same like dynamic sag, the same positions, or are you able to score? I suppose it's so early days to maybe.
Yeah, we're pretty early, man. Like we're kind of starting with just like a general tune in the middle that they're like, all right, this is kind of a good base to just start at, and then let's go from there. We also have some different links and stuff I'll be testing on the bike. So we've kind of, because I've been off the bike for so long, we've got a lot of things that have just kind of built up that are waiting for me to ride once I'm back to like basically where I'm at now. So now we'll just start checking the boxes and kind of testing through things. So we've got a lot of testing ahead between stuff on the bike and the suspension and different settings and different stuff to kind of find what I think will be my World Cup setting. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm pretty stoked. Like this is one of the gnarliest tracks I've ever ridden today. And I've been on the bike for about a day, and so to jump into that was a bit gnarly. And by the second run though, like stopping and routing sections and looking at stuff, like I can tell I need to go up another tune in the fork pretty quick. But as far as like anything feeling way out of whack, like I feel pretty good where it's at, but it's I need time to like get to that pace and to be doing full laps at that pace and kind of racing. So yeah, the goal is just to like really get busy on all that here the next few weeks and just kind of see where we get.
Also looking at that tyre, unbranded, presumably looking at the rear, it's an E13 tyre.
Yeah.
It seems like, you know, there has been in the recent years that homogenization may be too strong of a word, but definitely leading in to this alternating block pattern going between 3 to 2 to 3 to 2 through the centre. You've had obviously a huge opportunity over the years to develop tyres, whether it's Kenda, Onza, E13,
yeah.
You've had a lot of opportunity. Do you think that really how to put this, the ultimate traction of a tyre like that, but you're still going for that sort of more traditional sort of 2-block alternating centre on the rear? Do you not want as much grip as possible on a track like that? Do you not want as, you know, how do you feel sort of develop the difference? Yeah,
I think traditionally, I've usually been like more of a 2-block kind of tire guy. Like that rear tire is more traditionally what I run. Being on E13 this year, we're working on a new one of those tires. So depending on how that turns out, I might end up running that front and rear. I've run like the Maxxis Ascii front tire. Like we've tested everything, right, when we're developing tires, and I kind of know what everything is. And I haven't traditionally preferred sort of the 3-2 pattern over the 2-2. Like I like a tire that just has a really sharp biting edge on the side and
like
brakes
Pinot,
really good. Yeah, exactly. Or like that Onza Aquila, that was a great tire. So for me, like, I don't know, when we got on these, I was pretty much running this same tire because these E13 tires are made by V, who we rode for the last couple of years. And I did really good on that rear tire, front and rear, but the knob height's a little shallow. So we're starting to work on a new one. So I put this one on just kind of out of curiosity. And I really like this tire, like straight away, and so have the boys, and we're all running it. I feel like it still has that nice like hard bite, doesn't have that vague feel that I feel like other tires that are similar can have sometimes. So I'm really impressed with that tire. So I've been riding it. We'll see when we get the new one kind of where I prefer. But yeah, I think having that feel on the front and that extra grip and not having too much of this trough or whatever that kind of goes between where you kind of, you start to lose the tire for a second. Having that feel on the front, but then having a rear tire where you have that hard edge and then you got those big braking knobs so the bike will really slow down when you're on the brakes. It's a good combo. So I think it's a lot of people are going that way. The other two boys on our team are actually running these front and rear, and they really like them, but we only flew up with so many, and I don't want to clap out their tires since I'm not racing this weekend, so I'm running that one.
We've got a lot of noise. There's a train, the music's coming at the bar, but I didn't want to interrupt you. Something I noticed about this tyre is they actually have an L-shaped knob in the centre.
Yep.
They do have that sort of minion-esque siping that runs along the tyre to the centre as well to maybe give it more flex, a bit more formality. But it's kind of odd to see an L-shaped lug in the centre, no? Do you know what that would be to do?
Yeah, I think for this one it's just to increase that braking edge a little bit because it's L-shaped, but it gives you a little bit more of that back edge, and that's kind of your braking edge. So trying to just find like little things. I wasn't part of developing this tire. It was already done when I came on. But like I said, I love it. It's been good. And these are prototype tires in terms of the casing and the rubber we're running. And this is like straight up the best casing rubber combo I've ever run by far. Like I can run less pressure than I've ever run. We don't run inserts and we pretty much never get flats. So we've definitely got that nailed down. That tire is really good as a front tire. And then this second one we're getting, we'll see kind of where that ends up. But yeah, I think it's, you're just always trying to find little tweaks, you know? I think people jump on some tires because they look like other tires and whatever, but it's like it's a tire. You can't really like, what are you going to do? Like run a flame tread pattern or something? Like it's like if you look at a dirt bike tire, like they're in a pretty narrow box.
Well, that's what I always thought was really interesting about the pinner, because on a motorbike tire you tend to have almost like that paddle between you know, edge and centre knobs going right across. Amazing for braking and also really consistent, but because of rim strikes we tend to offset them in mountain biking. When you're developing the pinner, what was that a trade-off that you were kind of a calculated trade-off, or was it just like, I want something that's so consistent from edge to edge, which admittedly the pinner is?
For sure, yeah, I think for me, it actually started back on the old Specialized Butcher tire back in 2014, 15 when I was riding those. I really liked the staggering of the side knobs, how they were more in line. Like I felt like that tire was really consistent as you turned it over. It didn't have that spot where like you felt like you kind of lost it. That tire had braking issues, so when I did the Onza tire, it was kind of supposed to be like, I wanted that consistent feel but a little more braking edge. And then the pinner was kind of a similar version to that. And now we have these tires where it's like, this is the first time I've really run that 3-2 pattern, like you said, and I ride it and I actually really like it. So I think there's probably a pretty good chance I'll stick with this tire on the front. And then that new rear tire we're developing, we'll see where that one gets to. It'll be more in line with what I've run in the past. So I would say traditionally I'd probably run that new tire front and rear, but because I like this one so much, I think there's probably a good chance it'll stay in the front.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for your time. It's great to see you back on the bike.
Thank you, dude.
And have a good weekend.
Appreciate it.
So, Remi, you're not actually racing today. You're just enjoying the 40-degree riding temperature.
Yeah.
But I did spot this headset damper on your bike. Would you be able to just quickly talk about what you're aiming to achieve by running this?
I don't know if I'm aiming to achieve anything. I'm more just testing it out and seeing if it is beneficial. A couple other guys are now running it on the World Cup circuit, downhill and enduro. So yeah, I think the goal is to just reduce fatigue, right? Like have a little bit less fatigue in the hands, have a little bit less feedback. And this is my first day kind of properly testing it, and in the blown up bike park, it's working pretty well so far.
And this damper, am I right in saying it's one way? It damps the input coming back, or is it?
It damps the input on the way out of the turn, and then no damping on the way back, and then damping on the way out, no damping on the way back. So yeah, you can like adjust it here, and I think that's a little different to like some of the others, which is damping on the full sweep, and so far pretty cool. I mean, just kind of coming to the terms with the super blown out bike park. It's my first day in Whistler this year. Yeah, lots to figure out, but having a good time.
I suppose if it was when it's damped on the turn in, that could kind of help shuffle the back, you know, make the back fall in line with what the front's doing.
Yeah, maybe if you run it really tight. I haven't really played with it going to the extremes yet. I've kind of just like seen how little I can get away with and still feel it. But I just talked to Richie and he said that he goes quite a bit more than I was going, so maybe I'll try that next.
And we see, you've also got these kind of sensors on your bike to be running with that Fox electronic system. Mm-hmm. In some ways, do you think that that's a sort of natural conclusion of where we're going with, more kind of almost rider aids, just to help and either enhance the bike or bring it into the line of the trail that you're riding in real time?
Yeah, there's so much you can do to like tweak the bike to the terrain that you're riding. I mean, so far we've had racing on so many different styles of riding. Last weekend was so long and so rough and so physical, like you really wanted to like calm the bike down as much as you could. And yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to do that. And with all the tools that now we have, it's crazy. I got an O-chain on there now to kind of calm down the pedal kickback in my feet and calm down the drivetrain. And yeah, there's like so many things you can do now.
It's interesting, I wonder, you see in sometimes motorsport where they actually say at elite level, some of these drive aids are outlawed, like traction control. And we're even seeing brands, I think, that Magura recent test camp I did, they actually had that ABS system, which they're trying to make now for performance systems. And I wonder if it's going to be a case of like, this is really good for your average Joe, but to see the world's best, maybe it'll be limited in some way.
Well, that's the thing. I think you can always just get away with brung what you brung, but like when we're working with, the best of the best and trying to squeeze out as much time as possible on the World Cup, I think like, what's the harm in at least trying, right?
Absolutely, man.
Some of this stuff might or might not get you to where you want to be, but like trying it that's just fun.
And I think as a racer as well, there's actually something quite useful about like killing the curiosity. But like, actually I just didn't like it, and you can kind of move on.
Totally, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
I don't blame you for not riding the course on the enduro bike. It may be fun to ride, hard to race on this though, hey?
It would be pretty scary. I think there's a couple pretty big drops that people are saying on the downhill bike, you're landing flat and bottoming right out.
So we're here with Bodhi. Now, something I wanted to ask you is, we know that idlers really calm our feet. We know that we can hit rough terrain, chatter, and be really muted. But I also see you running an O-chain.
Yeah.
Can you just explain the thought and the feelings you're going for?
For sure. Basically, just trying to make it as close to no chain as possible. Probably a bit overkill sometimes with the O-chain and the idler where it is, and then usually we're running the DT 350 hubs with the 16-point engagement. It gives us quite a large throw before we pedal, almost similar to a free coaster. I've ridden a lot of BMX. I've ridden this for a while, so it doesn't really bother me having the delay in the pedaling, and just trying to make it feel as smooth as possible, because I like running my suspension pretty stiff for turns and whatnot. So to compensate with trying to get that small bump compliance, that's what we're going for.
It's funny, we got to that point where higher and higher engagement hubs.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, it's a personal preference, but, I suppose in terms of our anatomy and our body biomechanically being connected directly to the bike and having no kind of room for play can become a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something else I noticed is this collar you had.
Yes.
Can you just explain? I've never seen this before.
Yeah,
Can you just explain the thoughts and the feelings?
So yeah, it's a big thing in American football. It basically, the idea is that it puts pressure on your arteries, and then it increases the amount of blood that stays in between your brain and your skull, so that it basically, the more pressure in there, the more damping there will be. So it helps a lot for G-forces and repetitive hits and small crashes where you might, whiplash and that kind of thing, more so. Big hits isn't really going to have a big, it won't help much just because it's not the nature of it. But I figured it's a really non-invasive way to add another layer of concussion prevention, so I thought, why not try? And it's the only FDA-approved concussion prevention device in the world, and there's some really cool studies behind it, so I thought, try it, and I never noticed it when I'm riding, so.
Yeah, and you're saying you're not sponsored by this, you just think it really works.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of football, and those guys run into a lot more brick walls than I do on my mountain bike, so I figure if they're trusting it, then might as well try.
Totally. I mean, I know that Reese, your teammate, is really passionate about concussion and has sadly suffered from the effects a great deal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting what you said there. I think the way that mountain bike crashes can be so violent in terms of the deceleration.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get concussion because of the whiplash, right?
For sure. Yeah, even last year at Loudonvier, I slid out and hit my head, not very hard, but pretty bad whiplash, and I had to miss 3 races because of that. And I think, that wasn't really a head impact that caused that. It was just more the rotation and the mechanism of the injury. And like, this is the prime case where this probably would have helped. So, yeah.
Well, absolutely, it's cool to see something different, and
definitely.
Thanks for showing us your bike.
No problem.
So, Kasper, we're used to seeing you race, obviously, at the top level, EDR. Haven't seen you at that many downhill races, but it feels like there are more enduro races giving downhill a shot in recent years, especially when it's kind of a super cool track, kind of a feel-good event like this. What are your intentions? Are you here just to have fun, bit of practice, technical skills, or are you out there to kind of, take some blood?
I mean, maybe if we had a little bit more time to get going on it, since we had such a tight turnaround, like was racing on Sunday in Switzerland, would be a bit more prepared, but kind of just want to get the bike set up. And I mean, it's like such a cool opportunity to race this track. Like, I live just down the road, so it's like kind of too good of an opportunity to pass up. So pretty sweet to just get out there and have some fun, really. And yeah, well, I don't know, kind of see how it goes, but definitely plan is to just try to keep it in the comfort zone as much as possible.
I was going to say, it's a hard place to do that.
Yeah, definitely easy to just, I was pretty ticked off all the big jumps today, so that was good at least. And yeah.
And compared to, I think this is arguably sort of the 1199 course, maybe sitting a rung above a standard downhill World Cup track in terms of its technicality, at least the size of the features. I think there's an argument to say that that's where a lot of people want kind of downhill to go. Would you like to see enduro kind of step up the technicality a bit, do you think?
Yeah, I personally would love to see the enduro step up in kind of just more downhill. Like, I feel like it was going in that direction, and then I've been injured, like, kind of out for almost like haven't had like 2 full years, and then this year most of the races have like gone in the opposite direction of like what you were just saying. So that for me personally has been a little bit disappointing, but it's a race and you just gotta do the best you can. But feels a bit weird to just drop into this race, and I'm like, shit, like this seems like one of the gnarlier ones I can like sign up for. So like I'm gonna do nationals in some peaks in like a few weeks, and I'm like, it's pretty mellow compared to this. So.
But both are super high speed tracks, compared to even maybe some downhill courses. They seem to have like a real high average speed.
You think this one has a high average speed?
Actually, to be fair, I
didn't feel like I was going that fast, to be honest.
Well, no, I think looking at it, it looks like, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, relative to the technicality, it looks like it's pretty high. Like you're ticking along, you're not.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
When we think about your bike in particular, I know that in your enduro side of things, you have that kind of lived uncaged sort of philosophy running for the team. Could you just explain that and what that means for your setup?
Yeah, basically we're pretty much allowed to pick and choose all the parts we want to put on the bike. And it's kind of funny, a lot of me, Jack, and Texie are on fairly similar components like throughout, so that's like always fairly similar. But yeah, like me and Jack switched to the Conti tires this year, which like you just wouldn't be able to do with like normally you'd have like team sponsors and stuff. So that's been real cool to be like, oh, just try this, and found they've been pretty darn good, so I've been sticking with those. And
I mean, it's pretty cool to see, like SRAM drivetrain, XDR brake, and then a Galfa rotor. You know what I mean? Like when you kind of have this freedom, I think a lot of people almost want to get everything matching on their bikes, but actually when you can choose what you want, you can actually really tailor it. For something kind of special, right?
Yeah, definitely. The reason I have the Shimanos mainly is because I was just on them before, and I was like, oh, I'll just keep those, and they seem pretty good. So.
And how much are you trying to replicate feel between the 2S and the Capra? Do you kind of want something that maybe has like, go between similar brands of forks or anything like that, or do you kind of treat them as different?
Yeah, I tried to keep it fairly similar. Like it didn't really make sense to go like crazy different, and with this new bike, like it's the same size back wheel, so like all my wheels just interchange are just perfect, like real good. And then like run the O-chain on the enduro bike, run the O-chain on here, keep with the rental bars. I have like a lower rise on these, but similar feel and stuff.
And will we be seeing you? Do you think would you be able to creep into any World Cups this year, downhill World Cups?
Yeah, hoping to maybe do the Mountain N, and
cool.
It's kind of the only one that really lines up. It's after our season too, which is really good. I think you'll probably see quite a few enduro guys there. Yeah. But we'll kind of see how we get on.
Amazing. Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Pedro, it's great to see you racing in Canada. Established EWS racer for a number of years, and now you're on a downhill bike. What's the story there?
I guess I wanted to do some more downhill.
Yes.
There is a lot of cool events and races all around the world, and also it's super big in South America. So I'm just enjoying my bike, you know, and I love racing. So here we are. Super happy to be here. Also good to see you.
Yeah, man, it's great to see you. I mean, with high pivot downhill bikes especially, I think when people get on them, they consider it to be such a massive jump from a bike without a high pivot, without an idler. But I think, what's been your impressions going from the session to a bike that's sort of almost like a super high pivot with that weighted low center of gravity?
So I haven't spent much time on this bike yet, just a few days now, but this bike is completely different to anything or everything.
A bit of both, yeah.
It's completely different to everything I have tried before. So, but so far it's super good, it's super smooth. When you get into braking bumps or rough, hard section, the bike feels super sensitive. I quite like it so far.
Yeah. I think a lot of the feedback we get through our feet can actually come from that whipping motion of the chain. But I think that, do you think that having a belt, well, what's been your impression of the belt so far? Do you think it kind of calms the bike down a bit? Having that elasticated roller there?
I'm loving the belt. I'm really loving the belt because the bike is so quiet, like doesn't make any noise. You get into a rock garden and it's just quiet, and that's super nice. And also, it's the gearbox on this bike. So far, so good. All the weight is on the frame, so the bike is super stable. The suspensions, the wheels, like works more free, you know, and feels super good actually. Doesn't need much service. You're not worried about hit the derailleur or problems with the gears. It's just go, ride, enjoy. And
I think going onto a gearbox, it's sometimes you, at least when I ride them, I have to kind of inverse what I know. So like it's amazing because you can do a lot of shifting under braking. So the entrance into turns, even mid-turn, you can be like kind of changed. But at the same time, maybe they need more sympathy when cranking hard.
Yeah.
How's your journey been with that?
At the beginning, I struggled a little bit on getting used to. But I think when you get used to, it's super nice because, as you said, you can shift without pedal, and that could be vintage in different places.
Yes.
And also when you get used to, you just shift like as a normal pedal, and you do like a slightly lighter spin as a normal bike, but just with a different timing, you know.
Amazing.
And this one has electric shiftings, works super good, super smooth.
I think it's a lot neater as well. The electric compared to the grip shift, it looks a lot better as well.
Yeah. I didn't try the other one, but this one is super good.
Amazing. Well, best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much,
man.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Super happy with my bike.
Yeah,
so
man.
It's time to ride and enjoy.